Thank you very much, Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Let me confess something before I start. I cannot do a one-way communication. I'm not as good as my wife. So I'll try to make this as interactive as I can. If you could help me, please, that would be really helpful. So today, this subject is, Abdullah took probably 30 seconds to read just the title. It's a heavy one. I hope that I'm going to meet your expectations on delivering what you're expecting. But I'm not going to be, talking too detailed. I'm just going to give you some ideas, and I'll challenge the thinking, if you like, before we move on. So let me start by asking you, how many of you have applied Industry 4.0 in his own company? Thank you. I've seen 2 hands. How many out of the people who have actually applied it have seen positive ROIs? Perfect. Very good. So if I can say this is probably 2 to 3% of the audience, how many of you do know what Industry 4.0 is, or at least have an idea? Okay, very good. See more hands here. How many would like to learn about Industry 4.0? All right, amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so quick one. I'll just introduce myself here. My very first 9 years of experience was in automation, specifically with Siemens. Probably the most exciting time of my career. Automations, PLCs, robotics, and etc. The next 10 years was in manufacturing, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, running actual manufacturing. And the last 10 years would be in supply chain, managed supply chains during the crisis of 2021 and during Corona. So I guess I was lucky. And then a couple of years in consulting before I joined Humain as strategic procurement head or director. The uncomfortable truth. Sometimes we go to the reassuring lies, if you like, because that's easier. But the uncomfortable truth is that most Industry 4.0 initiatives actually fail, and they fail quietly. And I will say why. And it's not because of the technology is wrong, or it's not because there's something wrong with the way it is done. It's actually rather the choices that are made in those technologies. And pilots, I'm not sure if you applied it as a pilot in your organization, or is it across the organization? Because I'll tell you, sorry to say this, but applying Industry 4.0 standards as pilots in silos is actually destroying the ROI. You agree with me? Thank you. All right. Now, the reality as well is that the current situation as supply chain, as manufacturing, we are facing realities that we probably did not see before in the decades before. And by that I mean the volatility, the insecurity, the geopolitical situations, the logistics shocks, the supply chain. We all have lived through Corona, and you know what happened overnight in so many countries. You've seen the aftermath of that in 2021, the crisis of the logistics. Anybody in the logistics or in supply chain would understand what that impact actually, until I can argue that until 2 years later, probably in 22, 23, when things started to settle back in, until the war, Ukraine and Russia has also taken over the scene, and then what's going on now with the politics, and very recently, obviously, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the crisis on supply chain of data memories, SSDs and DRAMs, and the global supply chain. Just to give you an example, SSD RAM, 128 gigabyte, 5,600, has gone from $340 back in October to 5,300 just recently, almost 10 or 11 times. Just unbelievable. All right, going through, why is it different? Why is this now important for us to understand, comprehend what we are facing, and why we need to actually make more decisions, more aggressive decisions, more bold decisions. Today, the Saudi manufacturing, and I'm speaking here in local contents or in local context, the manufacturing, and I'm sure that you have probably heard from the Ministry of Industry and the National Industry Program or strategy, how the vision of 2030 is seeing the industry as one pillar of the 6 pillars of Saudi Arabia, of Vision 2030, right? And how we need to actually leapfrog, not only modernize, not only develop. It's actually we're going to be leapfrogging, not only in industry specifically, but also supported by the artificial intelligence. I'm going to talk about this a bit. And AI is actually not an experimenting tool anymore. It's actually now, it's an operating mandate. And it's an operating mandate not only for the private sector and manufacturing like most of you here, but also for the government, for the semi-government. And you'll be surprised the support, the motto support and the strategic, push behind it. All right, if we don't take decisions now, and this is what I want to make it very clear in your heads, what you would do is actually lock inefficiencies for a couple of decades to come. If you don't catch up today, it's going to be too late. It's not going to be an option. All right, going forward, why is it important here? Sorry. Just for you, quick glance, I actually thought maybe I would skip this slide, but apparently this is important. So what is Industry 4.0? Basically, what is it? It's actually kind of convergence between multiple pillars to deliver intelligent and adaptive autonomous ecosystem, manufacturing ecosystem. And it starts from all the way the infrastructure of connectivity, the IoTs, the 5G networks, etc., all the way to the full integration with the clouds and ERPs and whatnot. So it's actually an end-to-end. It's a framework, by the way, and that's how you probably have done, or some of the people would do, for example, some initiative on IoTs. Some would do some automation on the machine level, on information systems. Some would connect with the cloud and have his operation, for example, monitored on dashboards. That's all right and nice and deal. However, that's not the actual value delivery that you would expect from an Industry 4.0 point of view or from an AI-enabled systems and ecosystem point of view. We'll talk a little bit about more. So let me talk about a little bit about Industry 4.0, and this is probably a good leeway into what I'm going to talk about. So automation alone does not create competitiveness. So I automate my production line. Oh, that's amazing. How much did I save? Like a couple of headcounts. Is that good enough? Yeah, maybe. ROI? Well, inshallah, in 5 years I'll make my ROI, right? But that's not enough. That's not actually Industry 4.0. That's not the concept. That's not the understanding of how you do it. It's actually end-to-end. And when you do automation on one production line, it needs to reflect on your overall intelligent AI-enabled system and ecosystem, which means that if a truck that is delivering some parts or some raw material to your factory has had an accident, your system should know what actions it needs to take on the production line. In fact, up to the customer. What would you do to do that? This whole, if you just imagine, and we can talk about this all day long. Seems to me that I'm running out of time very quickly, so let me try to run. But the Industry 4.0, without doing this in silos, in production lines, in monitoring the fleet, on WMS, on TMS, those are not good enough. They're good, but not good enough. The real value is actually across the overall supply chain or value chain. That's when you actually realize the value. One thing that is, we are very, very lucky. I'm going to just run over this. And the shifts. This is what I was talking about, the shifts. It's not a machine-to-machine, talking to each other, but rather the decision traveling faster just even before the disruption. Just imagine, I'm talking about today the global crisis on ICs and memories, right? Just imagine that you have a system intelligent enough to tell you, by the way, in May this year, there would be a predictive or scarcity or availability in ICs, and hence what we need to deliver. What we need to deliver, or the plans that we are making for our production lines, needs to be altered today, or you need to be hedging, or we need to buy ahead of time, or we need to secure with our suppliers. Just imagine that this is the level of intelligence that you might actually achieve. The manufacturing volatility is not driven by capacity anymore, but the value chain as a whole, end to end. And then in Saudi Arabia, it's not about being, good and competitive within ourselves. It's actually we have to be ready for having an export. This is part of the very important pillars of Vision 2030. And finally, Industry 4.0 succeeds only when AI decisions travel all the way from suppliers to customers. Okay? I'm going to run over this very quickly. Real-world impact. This is real words. These are numbers that are, satisfied. With 30 to 50% reduction in downtime when you apply it right. 25 to 40% in quality improvement. 20 to 35% in cost saving, and 40 to 60% in the faster decision making. How many uses ChatGPT? Hands up. Excellent. Can I confess something? I used ChatGPT to help me do this presentation. And not only ChatGPT, it's other tools. I'm not ashamed of it. Okay? But just imagine that this is what we need to do, not at this level only of preparing some presentations, but rather on actually taking very important decisions on our supply chain and value chain altogether. I'm going to run over this very quickly. We have to feel very, very, very lucky here. Very lucky. In Saudi, alhamdulillah, there are things that we are doing and things that we are given as a bounty. Look at the major important advantages of AI in Saudi Arabia. I can speak about Humain. I'm from Humain, where His Royal Highness has given Humain the mandate to be the national AI champion for Saudi Arabia. Our vision is to be number 3 worldwide. Who's number 1 and 2? US and China. And we want to be number 3. That's huge. That's very ambitious. That's $320 trillion in investment and support that is given by His Royal Highness. We are not the only ones. We have Oxagon and we have Autonomous before us. And this whole thing is going to be integrated. We have a young force which is very, very ready to be upscaled. We have the connectivity advantages on the 5G and the fiber optics and so on. The $3.2 trillion that I spoke about. The energy advantage. Do you know that in Saudi Arabia, if we are not number 1, the cheapest cost of power in Saudi Arabia, if not number 1, we're on the top 5 at least. And then finally, the geographical design or the geographical location of Saudi Arabia. We will cover most of Europe or Eastern Europe, Africa, Asia. Our area is very, very rich. Okay? I'm going to skip over these practical applications in supply chain and value chain. Have a look at what you could do in planning, for example. The smart, the lower inventory, the high service levels, and the faster response times. What you would do in procurement. By the way, we are building our own ERP system. Who has good experience with ERP implementation? Who has bad experience in ERP implementation? No, you cannot take your hands twice. Yeah. I got both of them bad. How long does it take to implement an ERP system? 5 weeks, 5 months? 5 months, okay. Any less time? I've got 5 months. 4, 4.5, 3, I cannot see your hand, Hasha. 3 months or 3 days? 3 months, okay. Anybody got less?
Time.
Anybody got less? I have to finish this. Just imagine that we can do this in 3 weeks. Full ERP. We're building this as we speak. Yes, yes. AI, my friend. I've done this and AI gave me this presentation in 5 minutes. I had to work on it though. All right. Manufacturing, I'm going to talk about it. Why does it fail? Mainly because of the mindset. This is the last slide. I'm not going to go over this too much, but it's the mindset. AI is not about technology. It's not about bringing a few engineers who can tell me and teach me and apply some AI tools. AI is about the mindset. It's about the leadership. It's about the transformation. It's not about the skills, by the way. It's about the change management. People, like we used to be worried about automation and PLCs 30 years ago. That's when I started my career. People are now probably afraid, oh, AI is going to replace us, right? That's what we need to change as leaders. However, a final note or final message, AI or Industry 4.0 is not successful by itself unless it is enabled by AI that is applied from end to end, from supplier to customer. Okay, thank you very much.